and welcome back to Body Beyond the Scales, a podcast that helps you get stronger and more confident in your body through building better habits. Today I'm joined by Rebbecca, and we're going to be talking all about the menopause, her story in the menopause, which I think is quite unique. It's definitely something that other people have experienced, but it's definitely the first time I'd spoken to someone who'd had it from this perspective. And all basically about managing the menopause in a way that feels manageable. So without further introduction, Bex, do you want to give us a quick rundown? How are you?
Hi, thank you for inviting me to have a chat today. Even that's a strange question, isn't it? Like, who are you? What do you do? So obviously I'm Bex. I am a women's health, fitness, wellness coach, whatever you want to call it. I've been in the game for 12 years. And I predominantly help women, as you've said, Hall, manage menopause and feel the best that they can during what can be like a pretty rock and roll time, to be honest. As you've said, I am in full-blown menopause, surgical menopause for me at 38, so kind of talking the talk and walking the walk.
Yeah, you kind of like got a straight into it overnight kind of deal, didn't you? So do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of, I guess, how you ended up in the full-blown menopause at 38?
So I carry something called the BRCA1 gene mutation, and basically that means that I am at a much higher risk of developing breast and ovarian cancer. There's a long history of it in my family, but I am in the privileged position that I can take action to deal with it. So I've got to have some preventative surgeries, and one of them was an oophorectomy, which is basically fallopian tube and ovary removal, which meant that obviously I went to sleep, woke up, was in menopause.
Yeah, I mean that might be the fastest way to do it. So you avoid all the perimenopause symptoms. You just go straight into menopause.
Well, you would think that, but there's still quite a few symptoms that come after as well. So it's a bit of it's an individual thing.
Let's break those down then and talk about the symptoms and like what for you. Well, we'll talk through that kind of transitional phase of like typically what happens and then what have you experienced. So if we were talking about someone has still got their fallopian tubes, they've still got their ovaries, nothing's been whipped out. What's the typical kind of like rundown of how would the perimenopause, the menopause start?
Okay, so when I'm talking, there's going to be symptoms that your listeners are aware of and maybe they haven't experienced, but they're like, yeah, that's normal. And then there's going to be some stuff that people might have light bulb moments when they're listening, thinking, well, that's happening to me, but I didn't realise that was connected to hormonal fluctuations. So basically perimenopause is the transition leading up to menopause, and menopause is 1 year from our last menstruation, basically. That is menopause, and you can have up to 10 years of signs and fluctuations leading up to that date. Okay, for some women they can get through it quite breezily and they might have one or two symptoms but nothing that feels particularly unmanageable. The majority of women, the data tell us that yes, it is rock and roll. As I say, there is some unpleasant symptoms, there's some stages that feel worse than others, but on the whole, it's still manageable. And then for probably about a third of women, it can be really quite detrimental to quality of life. And some people can really, really struggle through the transition. And there's loads of things we can do, so it's not doom and gloom. So common symptoms would be obvious things like a change in menstrual cycle. But a lot of the time, that isn't the case, and people can continue to just have their normal monthly. But things like aching joints, feeling like you've got aches in your bones, and that's something that I experience. Things like mood swings, heightened anxiety, low mood, it can border on depression. Rage is a really common one. I think things that people don't recognise would be palpitations, especially when lying down, dry eyes, burning mouth, itchy skin. People say restless legs, and that's like when you're in bed at night and you're moving your legs side to side because you feel it's almost like a fizzy feeling. There's things like changes in your skin. So makeup you might have worn for years now doesn't sort of agree with you, and it's to do with rising histamine levels in our bodies. So, a lotion you've used for 30 years might now bother you. Things like that. We can have different reactions to foods that we've been fine with before because it can change the way our gut's behaving. So these are all kind of quite common ones. And then obviously it can impact things like libido, body image. But then there's some different ones that some people have got no idea it could be menopause until they listen to something like this. And a really common one for a couple of my clients, once they'd listened to me talk about it, they were like, is loss of joy. So loss of joy, loss of purpose is really common, which obviously is shit, sounds terrible, but it can be fairly common. It's just that people don't connect it. So loss of joy and just feeling a bit nothingy all the time, not feeling excited or hopeful for the future. It's just a bit flat. So that's like one of the biggest ones that's really common. For me personally, there's a few. I'd say the most impactful to me in my job has been cognitive function. So my short-term memory is just completely different to what it was a year ago. I can forget, honestly, words. I can forget the word for cup and it can just go. And sometimes it's really embarrassing because I'll be having a conversation like this and words will just disappear out of my mind mid-convo. So that's probably the one I found the hardest for like my personality and my job, because I think I connected a lot of my identity to like being articulate, to being educated. And then I'm like, I can barely string a sentence together some days. I need a script for most things. Sleep is a big one, which obviously when our sleep's being impacted, that's going to have a knock-on effect on everything. So sleep changed for me, but I have fixed it. So that's something I can give you tips about. And like I say, the aches and pains for me. So some days I'm fine, other days it's a feeling of like having flu. You know, when like your hips are aching for no reason. You get up in the morning, just everything hurts. So yeah, they're sort of, it sounds so miserable, doesn't it? But it doesn't have to be. But that's the truth. That's the reality of my symptoms anyway.
Yeah, you're not selling agency here, Becks. It was really interesting there what you said about like the lack of joy, because I think something that we kind of forget is how transitional of a stage of life most people are when they are going through the perimenopause. And for someone, say, who had kids in their, let's say they had kids in their mid-20s, by the time you're hitting, let's say, 45 and you're going through these perimenopausal symptoms, you're also in a really transitional stage of life with your family. And like there's there's possibly also a lack of purpose there. You've been basically full-time mum for probably the last 20 years, and all of a sudden you might not be there. You might also be changing roles in work because you've been promoted or things have changed, and all of these things can be happening. And to feel that lack of joy around the new stuff, but also it's a really transitional period, I think it's really important to remember that like you got a lot of shit going on. It's all right, like if you're not like managing it perfectly, and if it feels like it's quite a lot, I think the first thing just to do is just acknowledge that like, yeah, there's some tough stuff going on, and that's all right.
And I think you've absolutely nailed it there, Holes, because it's a lot of people think, oh, this must be menopause. But actually, aging and menopause are two different things. So there's things that happen in our bodies because we're aging, and in our lives because we're aging. And there's things that are happening because of menopause. And the two kind of because it's happening at the same time, the two kind of get mixed up a lot of the time. And we blame things on menopause that it's literally just because we're aging. And like you say, this sandwich generation of kids leaving the home, but maybe now you're looking after aging parents and you're working full time and your life is stressful. So whether you were menopausal or not, you're not going to feel like you did when you were carefree, pain-free, child-free at 20.
22-year-old, yeah.
What you do when you're 45 and you're spinning all the plates.
Yeah, and like your responsibilities have changed, and like those things are going to all look different, and they're going to mean your life is going to look different. I think one thing that I've been really conscious of is that like to not be like to not, despite my joke at the start of this, but like not to be scared of aging, because I think there's this whole thing, it's like it is a privilege to age. Like although all of these things, as you said there, like the menopause and aging can come together and they can all cause problems or like cause symptoms and things that necessarily don't give us the quality of life that we had when we were 22, carefree and no responsibilities. But like it's also really important to recognize that like what a privilege it is to get those things and like to get to that point where your body is doing those things. I think sometimes just a little bit of a reminder and a perspective shift on that, and going, how lucky am I to get the privilege to experience this, even if it sucks. Like I appreciate that, but like just recognizing that and having a bit of gratitude like behind the privilege of aging.
Yeah, I do agree with you, but I do think it's also important to know that hormones are directly linked to things like body image. So
sure.
when we're going through hormonal fluctuations in perimenopause, and that's what causes you to basically feel shit, is this the highs and lows. Okay, so when our progesterone, when our estrogen are flying up and then flying back down, that's what I'm saying, the rock and roll, that's directly linked to body image. So then we're going to start to look in the mirror and notice things like the fact our body is aging and the change in skin and the change in where we're storing body fat and things like that. So you're totally right, working on mindset, and I think as well doing the work to support your body image. So doing things for your body that aren't necessarily about making it smaller, lighter, thinner, are about feeling your best.
Let's talk about that then. So for you, did you experience any like body image shifts? Like was there anything that you felt like either in a small degree, a large degree, but was there any shifts that you felt?
So I think for me, because I am a coach who supports women with body image, and to give you an idea of my background, 12 years ago, I used to do bikini competitions. So absolutely standard. When you see a fitness professional who does that in the past, usually they've got pretty disordered relationships with food, the body. Not everybody, but that was the case for me. So I've had to do a lot of work for the last decade on repairing my body image. So mine's fairly bulletproof now. And that doesn't mean I don't have poor body image days. I had to do some filming last week in a gym and had to look at myself on film for 4 hours. And I challenge any woman not to start pulling themselves apart after 4 hours. But the difference is I got up the next day and just moved past it and moved on. So for me, it hasn't been too bad, to be honest. And even with my mastectomy coming up, the doctors are talking to me all the time about body image. And I keep saying to them, I'm going to be fine. Like, I will be fine. But for a lot of the women I coach, there's a strong link between the hormones and the body image, and it really does plummet around certain times in the month, and we have to do the work to try and, rebuild and build a bulletproof body image to try and manage it. But it is hard because your body is going to change, and I think the people listening in will want to know about the change in the way your body looks when you go into perimenopause. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I think we need to make sure everybody knows the score with it, because it's really disempowering to head into something and just assume that this is your lot and you've got to settle for it and your body's going to look a certain way because you're menopausal, when actually it's not the case.
There's one thing I just want to add there on body image. You may notice that around your cycle, if you are still having regular cycles, you're not yet in the perimenopause, you are just, of regular, like having regular cycles, your body image dips towards your period as well. And it's for the same reason, it's hormonal fluctuations. I will notice that probably anywhere from about 10 days out from my period to about 3 days out from my period, my body image will just plummet. And I'll look at myself in the mirror and I'll be picking myself apart, and I'll see certain parts of my body and thinking, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. And I have to catch myself doing it. And I have to say to myself, is this how you actually feel about your body? Or is this your period talking? Literally every single time is my period talking, and I have to catch myself doing this. But I didn't realize that I was getting this urge, and for me it came with an urge to diet. So I would be like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, and I'd be like, oh, I need to diet, I need to lose weight here. And then I'd be like, hang on, like what's going on here? And I'd be like, oh wait, no, period's due. And then when my period was due, and then when my period came, urge to diet went completely away, didn't bother me for another month. And I was like, and that's when I started to realize I was experiencing these hormonal fluctuations that were causing my body image to like dip. And it's something I feel like we don't talk about enough, that like body image will ebb and flow across the months because of these hormonal like fluctuations. Then when you add the menopause in, and we've got even bigger, like as you said, rock and rolls of the like of your hormones. Yeah, well, body image is gonna go it's gonna go with it.
Yeah. And I think the way you've just described it, perfect, tracking it, understanding it, so that you could say, wait a minute, this happens every month at around about this time. It's having the logic then, isn't it, to sort of try and take the emotion out of it. And when it comes to perimenopause, if you're listening thinking, am I? The best bit of advice I can give you is track everything for a few months, and I mean everything. So you might think, well, my cycle's fine in terms of menstruation. Track your mood, your body image, any aches and pains, whether you feel anxious, because if it comes to a point where you want to speak to your GP about things like HRT, any GP worth the salt is going to ask you to go away and track your symptoms for a couple of months anyway. So if you're thinking, is that me? Literally just a pen and paper or something like the Flow app to go, let's start understanding my body. But just as you said, I used to do that when I had a standard cycle anyway. And sometimes I'd think, I'm feeling a bit mental, and do you know what? I was last month at this exact.
Yeah, it's the exact same day. I got the urge.
Yeah. But the body composition thing, I just wanted to touch on it. Because I'll be honest, right? I've read every book, every study, I would say I'm clued up, right? Heading into perimenopause, menopause, I was in that position of knowing what was going to come. But I still a little voice in my head was worried about all the misinformation I've seen. Even though I knew it wasn't true, right? I've seen the data. It was kind of like, well, is this going to be horrendous? Am I going to lose all control of myself? Is my body, am I going to gain all this body fat and not be able to live the life I want to live anymore? Even though I knew, on paper that's not true, because there's so much noise out there, I still had these concerns of shit, like, is everything about to be out of control? So I think that's my main thing that I wanted to get across today, that yes, perimenopause makes maintaining your body composition harder. And yes, your body composition will change to some degree, but this is not because your metabolism's broken or there's something wrong with your body. It's because, well, there's two things happening. The first one is the change in body composition. So I have noticed, as is textbook, my waist is now wider than it was previously. So the reason being, because the fat that I carried previous, it's fat redistribution. So I haven't gained body fat, but the fat I used to hold around my bum and my legs basically is moving to around, so it's visceral fat on the front of me. So you might see a perimenopausal woman's body shape, usually, like kind of the norm, would be rounder at the middle, and then maybe like little thin legs where they used to have maybe quite muscular legs. So that's the change, the shift in the composition. Now I still feel comfortable in my body and still wear the same dress size and everything, and I haven't gained body fat. It's just my body looks different now, the shape of it. When it comes to women who do gain body fat, the maths is still mathing. This is about how difficult it feels to maintain positive, healthful behaviours around food, around exercise, because you're battling all the things that we've mentioned, the symptoms that make every day feel a little bit harder, plus all the stresses in your life. So you are potentially going to soothe with food and with alcohol, and you're maybe not going to have the energy, the motivation when you're achy to go and train. I went to the gym last Saturday and I had to leave because everything was aching. So, a lot of people would then go home and think, do you know what, I'll just not be on my diet today. And by diet, I don't mean on a diet, I mean a healthful diet. Well, I'll just start again Monday because I couldn't train. So it's more that. And
it's
I think,
like fuck it mentality, isn't it?
yeah, well, I didn't want to say that in case it offended people, but yeah, that.
Fuck it mentality, we can go with that.
Yeah, if I'm not doing it all, I might as well do nothing. But I think, although it might be frustrating for somebody whose body is changing, to me it's empowering to know that you can be in a body that you're comfortable in. You absolutely can. It's just going to take a little bit more focus than it did when you were 25. But the maths is still mathing. There's nothing wrong with you. And a lot of the time I think I get messages from women who are like, I'm perimenopausal, so this. And it's like, no, that's not the reason. That's something that's not making it easy, but it's not the reason it's happening.
That's it. I think the best way to maybe frame this is like there's everything still works the same in terms of it comes into calories in versus calories out. However, the amount of challenges and roadblocks that you may experience have increased. And whilst we can throw all of our toys out the pram and say, you know, I'm really upset about this and like therefore I can't lose weight, that doesn't get you any closer. Or if you say I can't feel good in my body, I can't be healthy, if we take weight loss even out of the equation, but if we say like, you know, we acknowledge that the barriers are there, it will be a little bit harder. There's nothing we can do about the barriers, but what we can do is change our approach to them and how we think about them. That's much more empowering than going, oh, well, like, never mind, I'm screwed because of X, Y, and Z. I can't lose weight because I'm in the in the menopause, in the perimenopause, I'm middle-aged, I'm whatever. And like having the like recognizing and taking the power back into your hands is what's really fundamentally important here.
And that's absolutely it. If I was to describe how I've been before menopause and after, now I would say I am obsessed with feeling well. So what I mean by that is before menopause, I looked after my body in terms of like movement, nutrition, but I wasn't protecting my sleep because I found sleep pretty easy to come by. I drank alcohol on occasion, you know, and it was fine. It didn't cause any negative impact for me because, you know, I wasn't doing it in excess. Post menopause, I have to be obsessed with protecting my sleep pattern because if I'm not sleeping, obviously we know it affects your mood, things like that. But when we are underslept, our body produces ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So you try staying in a calorie deficit when you're not getting enough sleep. You are not going to give a shit by 2:00 in the afternoon about losing body fat. You're not. So if nothing else, protect your sleep at all costs. And what I mean by that, people are like, well, I can't sleep. So things like a routine that is non-negotiable. So now for me, I am in bed at the same time every night, unless there was some one-off event, and I'm up at the same time every morning, because basically I'm trying to get some order with my circadian rhythm. I'm trying to support my hormone production. So if I go to bed one night at 11 and the next night at 8, and then everything's out of whack. So we can't, there's so much out there at the moment about this supplement will, you know, hack your hormones. That's bullshit. But our behaviours can help regulate our hormones. Our bodies are super clever. We don't need a menopause supplement. We need to go to bed at a regular time, and we need to nourish our bodies with some decent anti-inflammatory foods at a time when our inflammation's high.
Yeah.
And we need to lift weights. Like, people are looking out all the time for the thing that's going to fix it. And it's like, get obsessed with your sleep. Alcohol I'm mentioning, the number of women who come to me, right, who feel like shit, anxiety, for instance, is through the roof. They're gaining weight. We have a chat. They're drinking wine, like, to soothe. And I get it. When you feel shit, you want something to soothe. But it's like, literally like putting petrol on the fire. So for me, I don't drink now. Because if I drink, it impacts my mood the next day and my energy and my clarity, and it affects things like the inflammation in my body. So to me, it's not worth it. I don't want to wake up with palpitations, and, you know, I'm trying to work with my body. So that is the main advice I'd give to people, is like, you have to show up for your body now more than you ever have, and get obsessed with feeling well. And that doesn't mean, you know, you have to be extreme of like clean eating, but drinking wine, like things like that, it's going to have an impact on how you feel.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of habits and behaviours that we've maybe got away with because like you were younger. Like, your body is going to be better at like metabolizing alcohol when you're a 21-year-old who like walks everywhere still because you don't drive anywhere because you're still at uni. Like, all of those behaviours are going to be like the way that your body processes them are going to change as you age, and that's all right. Doesn't mean your body's broken, exactly as you've said, but it's really about going, okay, well, what am I doing right now to sabotage myself? And is not getting enough sleep, is doing like having behaviors like sitting and scrolling on my phone, sitting and scrolling on my iPad just before I go to bed, is that like leading to better sleep or worse sleep? Is that behavior leading me to, yeah, I might be getting enough sleep, but is the quality good enough? So actually just asking yourself what are you doing to, well, protect your wellness and like protect your body, I think is a really good question, because it then induces the idea of what can we add in to improve things rather than what can we take away. Because I think sometimes we're like, stop drinking. do this. And it's like, but actually, so, well, how can we improve your health rather than how can we make your life depressing and leave you with nothing? And that's where thinking about the, like we were saying there, like adding things in and thinking about what steps we can take forwards. What have been the best things then that you've added in rather than taking away? Obviously, what did you use to replace alcohol? Because I'm sure that alcohol has maybe had a role. We've all used alcohol, I'm assuming, at some point to cover up a few feelings. Let's go with.
So, to be honest, I stopped drinking alcohol to any sort of excess a long time ago because I just made a point of looking for other things in my life that brought me what alcohol does for a lot of people. And with the women I coach, it's kind of the same. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like, do not drink alcohol. But if somebody feels like shit and they're coming to me saying I'm desperate, that is one of the first things that they need to look at limiting. So I'm totally with you about adding in. But to me, it's like with some things, there's no plus sides to that.
For sure. And that's actually a really good point on alcohol, is that like there aren't really any benefits of alcohol, like other than you like the taste, like there are not really any tangible benefits or health benefits.
Like you've said so rightly, you can metabolize it better when you're younger. So in terms of things I've added in, one, like I say, is this obsession with a sleep cycle and routine. And exactly like you said, reducing things like screen time. So I have an app on my phone now that turns everything off at 7 p.m. So I can't access anything after 7 until 7 in the morning. So that's helped me loads. Reducing caffeine. So I only have one brew now in the morning, limiting alcohol. And then things like I bought aircon. It was one of the best things, aircon in my bedroom. So my bedroom's like a fridge all the time. That's helped because a huge thing for me has been I cannot regulate my temperature anymore. That's a huge symptom for me. So anything I can do to regulate my temperature. And then it's worth knowing that at this stage in life, your body just cannot recover like it used to. We need to plan in recovery. Downtime, basically. Time to, like, if we're living in this state of stress, busy all the time, got to do everything for everybody else, you are going to feel burnt out because your body just can't hack it like it could when you were 30. It just can't. We can't recover in the same way. Our recovery process is slower. So for me, I do a lot more sort of mobility work now that I never used to do, slow paced stuff. I do less mental cardio and I do more strength training, mobility. But like I say, downtime, like as daft as it sounds, reading on my bed, having a bath, things like that to just help me recover and have that time. And I know it doesn't sound that exciting, but I am living a very full, active life with very minimal symptoms compared to some of the women who come to me in bits. But when we look at their lifestyle, we're like, you're not working with your body here.
I think it's really important there to say, like, it's where you might have got away with in the past of doing like work hard, play hard. You can't necessarily get away with that forever. And I think that does just lead to burnout in whatever capacity that you're in. And it's going, okay, well, if we're working hard, we rest as equally as hard, but the working hard will add wellness to your life and like give you a body that actually functions well. But you need to mirror that with mobility work, rest time, mentally taking yourself away from situations, like having time to read, having time to journal, having time to meditate and do all these things. Like that isn't necessarily, you need to add all of those things in. It's just that you pick from the list. Just to circle back actually to the conversation around alcohol, you said that you have other behaviours that really help around that you've kind of like not gone to alcohol for, that a lot of people use alcohol for. What behaviours do you use? Because I think one thing that we often talk about is, okay, there's no benefits to drinking alcohol, but what other behaviours can you do instead of that?
So usually when it comes to alcohol, we're trying to soothe in some way. So it could be like, I'm stressed, so I'm having a glass of wine after work because that helps me wind down. So to me, it's like you need to find other things that have a similar impact to that. So for me, winding down is like last night, 6 o'clock, I'd had a day sitting at my desk all day. My head felt frazzled. So I put an audiobook on and I went out for a walk. And I did that for an hour before tea. And that works for me. I play badminton, I ride my bike. So for me, because I'm privileged, I know I am, that I get a decent dopamine hit from exercise, there's a lot of that for me. At the same time, I'm also a member of a book club. So I actually set up a little book club for some of my clients who this is one of the things we're trying to overcome. So we're reading a book together every month. So just looking for other things in your life that will bring you whatever it is that alcohol is bringing you at the moment. So I've got a client in my head who went to, what's it called? Paddle, is it called?
Oh, yeah, the new thing where it's like tennis and like squash at the same time, yeah.
He was like 62 or something and went to a trial of that 2 weeks ago because a lot of it for her was boredom.
Mm.
So I was like, let's do something a bit more exciting in our lives, shall we? Then that's what we do every night. She literally went way out of her comfort zone doing that and then messaged me like, absolutely loved it. Can't wait to go back. I'm going to start going 2 nights a week. So I think it's kind of like finding other things. But at the same time, I don't want to be preachy where I'm saying to people, don't drink. Like all my friends and everything drink and it's fine. I'm more talking about people who are really struggling with perimenopause, not people who are like, well, I enjoy a drink and my symptoms are fine. And do you know what I'm saying? People who come to me who are like, I feel like, say, like shit. It's like, that is not going to help. So we need to try and find something else. And I mean, your clients will know that if you're drinking alcohol, it makes losing body fat harder.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's your goal, like you're making the habits and behaviours harder by doing it. Not even just from a calorie perspective. And we all know that as soon as you have a drink, again, you don't give a shit, do you, about sticking to your diet? It's like whatever.
Yeah, like you said, like because alcohol changes cognitively, like how we're thinking. We almost have different values when we're drinking, and like we have different it leads to different behaviours, and not only in the moment and yes that day. So even if nothing happened let's say you went out on the Saturday night, you were drinking on the Saturday night, the Sunday when you've got anxiety and then you start emotionally eating because you're stressed about the conversation that you had last night with your neighbour that you shouldn't have had, or whether you then the next day where you're feeling you feel like crap and you're just craving carbohydrates and fatty foods and you're eating these hyper palatable foods, you're getting a takeaway in, whether it be like on the night or the next day, or actually whether it be 3 days down the line when your body still hasn't got rid of the remaining bits of alcohol in your body and you go into the gym and you're like, I just can't hit the numbers that I've been hitting over the last few weeks. And like the impacts of drinking, I think sometimes we associate just being within the moment, but actually they're extended over quite a large time frame or over a greater time frame than what we ever give them credit for.
Yeah.
Let's talk then about you said about like obviously sleep. What tips have you got for sleeping better? Because I feel like that's something that like people have like ideas around. We spoke about having like routines and stuff like that, but have you got any other tricks other than keep the room cool and have a routine?
So routine is underrated, and I want to give you a suggestion, like an idea, right? When we have a child, we are obsessed with their sleep routine. A lot of parents are literally like, no, my baby goes down at this time, it gets up. Do you know what I'm saying? And sometimes, but we're obsessed with it because we want to do the best by our kids. So we usually feed them right, monitor how much like refined foods they're having, make sure they're in the sleep routine. But then when we're adults, it's just all over the place and we don't have the same structure in our lives. Our hormones love structure and routine. Love it. So the more routines your life can be, the better. So that's seriously underrated. Obviously, like I said, I bought aircon and it was a game changer because I had just weeks of being hot all the time. Something that is anecdotal, there's not a lot of evidence, but many of my clients have felt the benefit, is a magnesium supplement. Now, we can't sit here and say, oh, definitely magnesium for sleep because there's not enough data. But like I say, anecdotally, there's a magnesium capsule that a lot of my girls take that I can share the details of it afterwards, and many of them have said that it's really helped their sleep. Reducing phone time, like you've said, alcohol, caffeine, all things that are going to impact your sleep. So doing things that spike your cortisol before bed. So like when people are training at 8:30 and then go to bed at 9, like your adrenaline and cortisol are high. That's the opposite of what we want to be happening. That's what you want kicking off in the mornings. That's why it's good to train in the morning. And then in terms of like sorting out your circadian rhythm, so that means like getting your melatonin coming at the right time, the cortisol coming at the right time. It's the sleep routine at night, but then ideally you'll get outside in the morning and get some fresh air and your body goes, oh, it's time to wake up. It's the morning. Rather than getting out of bed with 5 minutes to spare, getting in a car, driving to work, sitting in an office, getting no natural daylight, just basic habits like that can help regulate your hormones and just and get some routine with them, and you will feel better within a few weeks if you say, never mind everything else, I'm just going to focus on sleep. That's probably going to be one of the most impactful things that you can do to feel better.
For sure. You mentioned the magic buzzword there, and it's the buzzword of social media, I think, and the menopause at the moment, but cortisol. Do you want to give us a bit of I love the eye roll that followed that. Do you want to give us a bit of a breakdown of, I guess, the common misconceptions around cortisol and what is relevant for us to know?
Okay, so what you're probably meaning is things like cortisol causes belly fat. Cortisol's the reason you're not losing weight. Cortisol is being demonized, right? And it's a really important hormone that we need to feel good and to get up and go. It's an important hormone. So first we need to not be scared of cortisol, and also know that there's a tiny, tiny amount of the population who would have dangerous levels of cortisol, chronic cortisol, that we'd have to be worried about. And that would be part of a health condition. That's not just a normal stressed out 40-year-old woman whose body's producing cortisol. Our bodies are super clever. They deal with it for us. When we talk about cortisol and weight gain, again, it's more about behaviours. Because if you're stressed, you're probably going to do stupid shit around food and exercise and alcohol because you're stressed, not because of cortisol. But the sad truth is that women's vulnerabilities make people money. The two go hand in hand. During perimenopause is probably one of the most vulnerable times away from, say, being a new mum in your life. So people are going to see that as an opportunity to make money off you. So that means instead of, and as well, we're all guilty of it. We don't want to take responsibility, do we? And say, oh, it could be my behaviours that are causing this. So it's like, what's the next thing I can pay for away from just saying, sort my own shit out, that's going to get me the results I want? I know. It's cortisol's the problem. Oh, I know. This supplement's going to fix me. It's just all money making. But a lot of the time, these things, these sort of myths, there's like a shred of truth in it. So they pull this tiny shred of truth out and then make a product based on it. That's my understanding of cortisol.
Yeah, I think exactly as you said there, cortisol's not anything to be scared of. Like, it is not an issue if you have cortisol in your body. Actually, we'd all be concerned if you had no cortisol in your body, because that would mean that something really was not going right with the stress response. But exactly as you said there, like, as a normal, stressed out 40-year-old woman, you're gonna be experiencing like higher levels of cortisol, and it's actually not the cortisol that's the issue, it's the behaviors that's like leading to. So asking yourself, well, what can I do to get my state out of chronically being stressed, is probably going to be the easiest thing. It's going to be the actual solve, not some sort of supplement.
Dealing with the root cause, but people
exactly.
don't want to do it because it's simple, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's simple to just go, do you know what? This situation stresses me out, and I need to look to either reduce it or eradicate it altogether. So that's simple, but it's not easy to start having boundaries and difficult conversations with people and saying, I'm putting myself first and you do some of this stuff. So that's why we avoid it and go, do you know what? That person on Instagram said I've got high cortisol. So that's the reason I'm not doing the things I know I need to be doing deep down.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it can come down as well to, I'm stressed out, but I'm stressed out because I'm not putting good enough boundaries in place. And we can talk about we can talk about it on an individual level. We can talk about it on a societal level, how a lot of women feel like they need to completely have flexible boundaries. But what's important is that if we're talking about how you can make an empowered choice around you, it's up to you to set those boundaries. I guess, Becks, what have you done to set better boundaries around yourself and to put yourself first in that way that has helped you with dealing with symptoms and allowing you to basically protect your wellness?
So for me, as a coach, I've had to put boundaries in place with the level I was working at. And obviously, when you're coaching, especially when I'm coaching women who are going through this, it can be quite emotionally draining. So I've had to put boundaries in place of certain times that I'm working and speaking to people and certain time that I need to have off. And I put new boundaries in place. For instance, something I've done is change the way my friendships look, because now I'm busy and I've got things going on and I only want to make time for people who fill my cup. So that doesn't mean I've had to, it's not been drastic. I've not cut people out. I've not fallen out with people. It's just like I'm protecting my peace, and these relationships aren't allowing me to do that. So I've definitely put more boundaries in place with who I have around me on a regular basis. Now, I know there's people in your life sometimes that you can't just get rid of that might be hard work, but you might be able to change the way you respond to them, for instance, or the amount of exposure you have to that person, or maybe you even have to have a difficult conversation. So I've got a client whose mum triggers her because she talks about her body a lot. So we've worked on boundaries, and she's had to have a conversation with her mum, polite, where she said, could you please stop making comments about my body? No explanation, no, because it makes me feel like this, that's it. And she's had to keep saying it a couple of times because this is habitual. Can you please stop making comments about my body? Eventually it's going to get through, isn't it? This person's going to stop making comments about her body. So it's not easy. Like I say, it's simple, but that's another one. It's not easy.
Yeah, but I think that's something that's worthwhile doing, especially if you are finding that your boundaries are constantly being crossed and that is therefore leaving you worse off because of it. And that's okay to turn around and say, actually, I need to put myself first in this situation, and I need to put my needs above others and stop people pleasing, basically. It's so easy to do, especially when you feel almost like that's something you've done your entire life, to people please. So just setting those boundaries within yourself and setting those boundaries with other people. And I think those things that you said there is around work as well is so important. It's so easy to let work, especially with working from home, carry on into the evening. So just saying to yourself, like, right, my work ends at X time, I put it down, and having a routine to kind of decompress. I know that my work basically stays in the office. There'll be a few times that I take it to the dining room table, but it's more of a I can't focus in the office for whatever reason. But generally I will sit in a different seat to eat than what I do to work, and just little things like that, just to separate things so that you're not feeling constantly like your boundaries are being overstepped.
We could talk for hours, couldn't we?
Yeah, I know. So let's talk through I guess those any final kind of myths that you feel like there are around the menopause, or anything that you feel like, do you know what, I'm fed up of hearing about this on social media.
Myths. So things like menopause causes weight gain. No, your behaviours do. The menopause changes the way our body looks, but there's loads we can do about it. Just to follow on from that, if you read anything that says menopause breaks your metabolism breaks down as you age. No, what happens is as we age, our body naturally loses muscle mass year on year. If we don't strength train, we're not counteracting that. That is what could impact your metabolism, getting to a point where you don't carry the muscle mass that you used to. But even then, it's not nearly as radical as is made out on social media. But that's one of the reasons we encourage strength training as we age, is to hold on to protective muscle to keep us in a body we're comfortable with, a toned, strong body, obviously, but then to keep us independent and capable as we age as well. So your metabolism isn't broken or declining because of menopause at all. Aging causes a slight reduction, speeding up. I'm talking 50s and 60s, not because you've hit 40, your metabolism hasn't just fallen in the bin. Anybody who is trying to sell you a supplement, I want you to question what they might be getting from it, if they're sponsored or they're involved in the supplement, if they're going to make money off you. Because if you're doing all the basic things for wellness, all the things you tell your clients, 3 meals a day, centered around protein with some fruit, veg and fibre, get out for a walk, lift some weights, go to sleep. If you're doing those things, there's nothing to add other than, I'll touch on, but I'm not a doctor. Obviously, HRT is something that somebody might add. And I want to be transparent and say that I take HRT as well, because we haven't mentioned that. For me, that was an essential. And the reason being, because at 38, when you go into menopause overnight, that could be really quite dangerous for me from a cardiovascular perspective and chances of developing osteoporosis and things like that, because it's not natural as such, it's just happened overnight. HRT was a no-brainer for me. It's not for everybody. But what I'm saying is, if you're doing all of the things, you're doing all of the things and you're still not feeling great, that could be worth going and talking to your GP about what that's, you know, the opportunities that are there for you with that.
Yeah, I guess, and obviously, again, you are not a medical professional in this setting, but it's one of those chicken and the egg situations, isn't it? Where it's like, if you're finding that because of the drop in your hormone levels, you're already struggling with like low mood, you're struggling with like low energy, you're not getting that. Is it that you need to get the replacement first, or is it to start working on the other things first? But you're not able to work on, say, like your sleep routine because you're experiencing the symptoms of like low hormone levels. Maybe it's worth having that conversation with your doctors sooner as well. But
it's literally just my opinion, but whenever somebody comes to me, I say, let's start with the basics first, the things that are within your control. Let's get all your behaviours sorted, and then if in a couple of months we're not feeling significantly better, then let's look at that as like a nice cherry on the top, the missing piece of the jigsaw. Whereas I think a lot of times I know women who have gone and got HRT expecting it to be this miracle solution, but they're still not looking at any of the other behaviours. And it literally is just that nice to have cherry on the top for some women who need it. Some women don't, some women do. But I wanted to touch on HRT just because there is a lot of misinformation out there about HRT, a lot of scaremongering. It's getting better, but when I speak to women, there's still a lot of fear around HRT, and it's unnecessary fear. So I'm not promoting it. It's very individual. But what I am saying is a lot of the data isn't accurate. So if you've been considering HRT and the reason you're not talking to your GP is because you believe a blanket statement such as HRT gives you cancer, it's not true. So I think it's important for us to tell people that that just is not true. So to go and, if you're really struggling, like, of course, go and have a conversation with your GP.
Yeah. And exactly as you said there about doing the like starting with the basics and focusing on doing that as well. If you then add in the bit that we said earlier about tracking your behaviors, tracking your data, tracking your how you're feeling, your mood, like even tracking things like libido, like those things are all important because they can all be signs of basically like where you're at and how your body's like either improving or not improving. Because if you then say, right, okay, we're not going to go on HRT straight away, but we're going to start off with these behaviours, you then start tracking things. You can, one, see if things are improving, and two, if they're not improving, you take that to your doctor and give them the evidence, and then they will be like, cool, I've now got 2 months worth of evidence, 3 months worth of evidence, and we can make decisions now, rather than me saying, go away and track all this for the next 2 to 3 months, and now it's been 6 months since you've been like not had any change. So just starting with like collecting data is a really useful thing to do.
And that's you taking your power back, because what I will say is GPs always get a really bad rep, but a lot of women turn up clueless. Like they don't have any of the answers. They don't know what's happening in the body. They're not sure how long this has been going on. And they want GPs to be, and don't get me wrong, I know people have really negative experiences, but I think sometimes we don't take autonomy for our own health. And we sit in a GP chair like, well, fix me, tell me what to do. But imagine how much more powerful the conversation with your GP would be if you went, right, this is what's been happening to me for 3 months. These are the patterns that I've managed to spot myself. I think this is what it is. Do you agree? I'm doing all these things. What else can we do? You know, instead of just bumbling into there and then being frustrated that somebody's not waved a magic wand. I don't know, maybe that sounds harsh, but I do think GPs are expected to know everything about everything.
Yeah, I mean, you get like, what, 10, 15 minutes with a GP these days? So, like, you're not getting long. Don't expect them to know the last 90 days of your health.
It's so powerful for you to say, well, here's all the information, because I know my body and what's happening.
And that's why it's so important to know what's normal for your body. And because, like, we can talk about things here. And exactly as Beck said, like, she has symptoms that you won't experience, and you'll probably have symptoms that Bex hasn't experienced. And when I get to be in the perimenopause, there'll be symptoms that I experience that you won't have done, and vice versa. Like, so it's important to know what's normal for you. And you might find that actually it's normal for you for whatever reason to get really hot and sweaty at random occasions, but you might find that then when you're in the menopause, or in the perimenopause rather, that gets exacerbated. So then knowing again what's normal for you is really useful. And again, you're empowered with that information, and you can act on it in a like more strategic way rather than just basically like throwing shit at a wall and hoping to see what sticks. So Bex, let's round this off then and talk through, I guess, what do you see as being healthy? Like, what is health to you? Because this is a question I like to ask everybody, but I always get different answers. There's a lot of crossover, but I always get a different answer. What does being healthy mean to you?
So I'm not going to bullshit. You asked me this before, which I was grateful for, because I cannot hold on to thoughts for longer than 5 seconds. So I actually wrote down what it means to me, because I thought you'll ask me and I'll just forget the word for spoon or something. So
I'm curious about how spoon comes up in this
no,
conversation.
but I forgot the word for key the other day, and I was just the thing that you put in the door that's got the things in it, and it's like, God, everything's like a game of articulate now. So, and I feel really passionate about this. So I thought, don't mess it up, write it down, because I think health isn't a body type or a dress size, and it means something different to everybody. To me, health to me, my version, is showing up for my body consistently, imperfectly. And it means working with my body. To be healthy is feeling at home and content and capable in my body. So meaning that I can just live the full and active life that I want to live, not that somebody else does, the things that I want to be fit and able to do. That's where I'm at with it. So that maybe sounds a bit, I don't know, hippie-ish.
No, I love that. And I love the feeling at home in your body. Like, I think that's so important to feel like that way, that you feel not like an imposter or not like someone else is in charge of your body. And it comes back down to that idea of being empowered, like, and being empowered within yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having a chat. I could talk to you for hours.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find you, they want to drop you a follow on social media, where's the best place to get you?
So it's RLB_coaching on Instagram. And I have loads of free resources for menopausal women, because I genuinely want people to be able to take the power back. I think even though we've got totally different client bases, we're similar in that, aren't we? That knowledge is power, and it's so sad and frustrating that there's that much shit out there for people to have to sort of trudge through. So RLB_coaching.
You also have a podcast as well where you obviously talk about everything, is that right?
Yeah, so again, it's RLB coaching on YouTube, and it's always just me on there talking about different bits and pieces on women's health, really. So if you're 20 and you want to get abs for Ocean Beach or something like that, you probably don't want to come and listen to my podcast, to be honest. But if you're over 40 and stressed out your head, I'm there.
The good news is I don't think there's any 20-year-olds that listen to this that want to get abs on their abs. I think we're all clear on that one. I think we've avoided those. But Bex, thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a great chat, and I think as well, I feel like I've learned things about the menopause. So thank you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a 5-star rating or review. Make sure you hit subscribe as well, so that you never miss an episode of the of future episodes of Body Beyond the Scales. But otherwise, have an absolutely cracking day, and I will catch you soon.